Have you ever noticed that your inner critic keeps returning, no matter how much you try to ignore it? Scientists explain that the inner critic is a part of our brain designed to protect us. Early experiences, cultural messages, and social comparisons all contribute to shaping this persistent internal voice. Neuroscience shows that negative self-talk activates the same brain areas as real threats. The inner critic often appears in moments of vulnerability or uncertainty. Psychological research indicates that the critic may stem from childhood experiences. It thrives on repetitive thought patterns, reinforcing self-doubt and anxiety over time. Mindfulness studies reveal that noticing your inner critic without judgment can help reduce its intensity. This critical voice often disguises itself as helpful advice, undermining confidence and hindering growth. Cognitive behavioral psychology explains that these automatic thoughts can be unlearned with practice and awareness. Your inner critic is also influenced by societal pressures and media comparisons that evaluate worth and success. Functional MRI studies show that self-critical thinking can trigger stress responses, affecting overall well-being. The inner critic can be activated by perfectionism, fear of failure, or unrealistic expectations. Many people try to fight or ignore the critic, but research shows that direct resistance often strengthens its presence. A more effective strategy is acknowledging its existence and observing the thoughts objectively. Psychologists emphasize that self-compassion can help weaken the critic's influence. Journaling about your thoughts helps identify recurring patterns and distinguish between valid concerns and exaggerated criticism. The inner critic often uses comparison to others as fuel, magnifying insecurities and minimizing achievements. Studies suggest that visualization techniques can redirect negative self-talk into constructive internal dialogue. The critic tends to become louder when you take risks or try new things. Understanding its evolutionary purpose helps you reframe it as a guide rather than a dictator of self-worth. Self-reflection allows you to notice triggers, patterns, and contexts in which your inner critic is active. Cognitive restructuring exercises encourage questioning negative self-statements, replacing them with evidence-based perspectives. Mindfulness meditation practices strengthen awareness and reduce automatic reactions to critical thoughts, promoting emotional balance. Social support from friends or mentors can buffer the intensity of the critic, providing objective feedback. Inner critics often exaggerate threats or failures, making situations appear worse than they are. Therapy approaches provide tools to recognize, challenge, and modify persistent negative self-talk. Self-compassion research shows that treating yourself with kindness decreases the critic's influence. The inner critic sometimes arises as a form of overprotective self-preservation rather than genuine evaluation. Recognizing its origin and purpose can help you shift from judgment to curiosity about your thought patterns. Thought-stopping techniques can interrupt cycles of self-criticism, creating space for reflection and constructive thinking. Inner critics often amplify small mistakes, making them seem catastrophic and discouraging progress. Mindful breathing and grounding exercises reduce the physiological impact of self-critical thoughts on stress levels. Research highlights that gratitude practices can counterbalance negativity and reduce the inner critic's dominance. Self-awareness allows you to observe critical thoughts without reacting, creating a mental space to respond intentionally. Writing compassionate letters to yourself has been shown to weaken the internal voice of criticism over time. Recognizing patterns of perfectionism can reveal why the inner critic is persistent and how to manage its influence. Inner critics often use should statements, reflecting unrealistic expectations based on pressures. Awareness of automatic thoughts allows you to. The inner critic often thrives when we compare ourselves to others. Research indicates that self-critical thoughts activate the same brain regions as real threats. Early experiences shape the voice of your inner critic. Mindfulness practices help you observe these thoughts without judgment. Cognitive behavioral strategies teach you to identify distorted thinking. Inner critics are often disguised as helpful advice. Self-compassion research shows that kindness toward oneself reduces anxiety. Journaling your thoughts allows you to track patterns. Perfectionism amplifies the inner critic. Visualization exercises can replace harsh self-criticism. The critic becomes louder during uncertainty or change. Understanding its evolutionary purpose reveals its protective mechanism. Regular self-reflection helps identify triggers. Cognitive restructuring allows questioning negative self-statements. Mindful breathing reduces stress responses. Social support buffers the impact of self-criticism. The critic exaggerates threats and failures. Therapy provides practical tools to manage negative self-talk. Inner critics often arise in moments of vulnerability. Self-awareness enables observation of the critic without immediate reaction. Gratitude practices counterbalance negativity. Thought-stopping techniques interrupt cycles of self-criticism. Inner critics frequently amplify comparison. Mindfulness strengthens the ability to notice thoughts. Self-compassion exercises provide an alternative voice. Recognizing perfectionist tendencies helps explain the critic's persistence. Should statements fuel the critic? Awareness of automatic thoughts allows for distinction between fact and criticism. Accepting the critic's presence reduces its intensity. Visualization of supportive inner voices fosters positive self-talk. Practicing kindness during failures reduces the critic's influence. Stressful periods amplify self-critical tendencies. Reflecting on past successes diminishes the critic's power. Cognitive reframing replaces negative exaggerations with solutions. Neuroscience research shows that the inner critic can be reshaped. Observing its triggers is the first step toward healthier dialogue. Combining mindfulness, self-compassion, and cognitive restructuring reduces self-criticism. Inner critics exaggerate personal responsibility for events outside your control. Reflecting on objective evidence corrects distorted self-perceptions. The critic's voice mirrors past authority figures. The inner critic often becomes louder when we face uncertainty. Research suggests that this critical voice is rooted in survival instincts. Neuroscientists explain that repeated negative self-talk strengthens neural pathways. Mindfulness meditation allows observation of these thoughts without reacting. Journaling experiences and emotions helps identify recurring patterns. Cognitive restructuring encourages questioning the validity of negative statements. Self-compassion strengthens resilience by providing an internal supportive voice. The inner critic often disguises itself as helpful guidance. Studies show that when we resist or suppress the critic, it often intensifies. Visualization techniques allow imagining a compassionate inner guide. The critic exaggerates small mistakes, creating a disproportionate sense of failure. Perfectionism fuels self-criticism, driving unrealistic expectations. Awareness of automatic thoughts helps distinguish fact from exaggeration. Behavioral interventions provide evidence to challenge distorted beliefs. Social support reinforces realistic perspectives and mitigates the intensity of critical internal voices. Inner critics often echo past authority figures. Mindful acceptance of self-critical thoughts decreases their automatic influence. Gratitude practices help balance negative thought patterns. Thought-stopping techniques can temporarily interrupt cycles of criticism. Self-compassion interventions reduce the critic's intensity over time. Recognizing perfectionist tendencies clarifies why the inner critic persists. The critic often uses should statements. Awareness of these automatic patterns allows reframing of thought. Accepting the critic's presence without resistance reduces its emotional dominance. Visualization of a supportive inner voice fosters positive self-talk. Stressful situations and transitions amplify self-critical tendencies. Reflecting on past successes strengthens confidence. Mindfulness and self-compassion combined reduce the frequency of critical thoughts. Cognitive reframing replaces distorted self-judgments with balanced assessments. Understanding the critic as a learned pattern reduces its power over emotions. Journaling, self-reflection, and observation help track negative thought patterns. Inner critics often exaggerate personal responsibility, creating unnecessary guilt. Practicing kindness toward oneself rewires neural pathways. Observing without judgment allows detachment from criticism. Social support and mentorship provide external perspectives. Identifying triggers and contexts enables targeted interventions. Acceptance-based approaches have been shown to reduce self-critical thought patterns. Behavioral experiments offer opportunities to challenge inaccurate predictions. Inner critics often signal areas for growth, acting as feedback. Mindfulness strengthens the ability to notice negative thoughts without being dominated by them. Gratitude, reflection, and positive self-talk balance the internal dialogue. The inner critic often becomes louder in stressful situations. Research shows that self-critical thoughts activate the brain's threat response. Early life experiences shape the patterns of the inner critic in adulthood. Mindfulness practices help observe critical thoughts without judgment. Journaling helps track recurring negative patterns. Cognitive behavioral strategies provide tools to challenge distorted thinking. Self-compassion creates an inner supportive voice. The inner critic often masquerades as helpful advice. Suppressing or fighting the critic often strengthens it. Visualization exercises allow imagining a compassionate guide. Perfectionism fuels the critic, exaggerating small mistakes. Awareness of automatic thoughts enables separation between realistic evaluation and exaggerated self-criticism. Testing negative predictions through behavioral experiments provides evidence that challenges distorted beliefs. Social support reinforces objective perspectives. The critic often reflects internalized voices from past authority figures. Mindful acceptance of self-critical thoughts decreases their automatic influence. Gratitude practices help counterbalance negativity. Thought-stopping and grounding techniques interrupt cycles of criticism. Recognizing perfectionist tendencies explains why the critic persists. Should statements often feed the critic, reflecting unrealistic expectations. Awareness of habitual negative patterns allows reframing self-talk. Accepting the critic's presence rather than resisting it diminishes its emotional power. Visualization of supportive inner voices fosters positive self-talk. Stress and transitional periods amplify self-critical thoughts. Reflecting on past achievements reinforces competence. Cognitive reframing replaces distorted judgments with realistic evaluation. Understanding the critic as a learned habit, rather than objective reality, reduces its control over emotions. Journaling and reflection track recurring negative patterns. Inner critics often exaggerate personal responsibility for external events. Practicing self-kindness reshapes neural pathways. Observing thoughts without judgment fosters detachment from criticism. Social support and mentorship provide external feedback. Identifying triggers, habitual phrases, and contexts enables targeted interventions. Acceptance-based approaches, rather than suppression, have proven more effective. Behavioral experiments allow testing of negative predictions. Inner critics often signal areas for improvement. Mindfulness strengthens awareness, enabling observation of thoughts. Gratitude, reflection, and positive self-talk help balance internal dialogue. Recognizing the critic as a natural cognitive process reduces fear. Repeated practice of awareness, kindness, and reflection reshapes neural pathways. Critics often appear during creative endeavors or risk-taking. The inner critic may never fully disappear, but with awareness, self-compassion, and evidence-based strategies, its intensity and influence can be significantly reduced. Scientists explain that self-critical thoughts are habitual neural patterns that can be reshaped through consistent practice and reflection. Mindfulness strengthens the ability to notice negative thoughts without reacting, creating space for intentional, constructive responses. Cognitive restructuring helps identify distorted beliefs, replacing exaggerated criticism with realistic, evidence-based perspectives. Journaling provides insight into recurring patterns, triggers, and contexts in which self-criticism is most active. Inner critics often arise during stress, uncertainty, or challenges, highlighting areas that require attention and self-compassion. Self-compassion exercises cultivate a supportive internal voice that counterbalances harsh criticism and promotes emotional resilience. Visualization techniques allow imagining encouraging voices, gradually replacing judgmental self-talk with positive guidance. Recognizing perfectionist tendencies reveals why the inner critic persists and how it limits risk-taking and creativity. Should statements often feed critical thinking, reflecting unrealistic societal or self-imposed expectations. Awareness of habitual negative thoughts allows conscious reframing into constructive, solution-focused perspectives. Acceptance of the critic's presence reduces emotional dominance and empowers intentional decision-making. Social support provides objective feedback, diminishing the inner critic's influence over self-perception. Behavioral experiments test negative predictions, providing evidence to counter exaggerated self-criticism. Mindful acceptance allows observation of thoughts without identification, reducing automatic reactions to criticism. Gratitude practices shift focus from flaws to achievements, countering self-critical tendencies. Inner critics often exaggerate personal responsibility, generating unnecessary guilt or anxiety over external circumstances. Practicing kindness toward oneself reshapes neural pathways, weakening habitual self-critical responses. Observing thoughts without judgment fosters intentional, constructive responses instead of reactive negativity. Identifying recurring triggers, habitual phrases, and contexts enables targeted reduction of self-critical patterns. Critics often appear during creative or risk-taking activities, signaling growth opportunities rather than failure. Acceptance-based strategies have proven more effective than suppression in reducing negative self-talk. Cognitive and behavioral interventions encourage evidence-based, realistic self-evaluation instead of automatic criticism. Visualization and guided self-talk create internal supportive frameworks to manage self-criticism constructively. Awareness and self-compassion combined increase resilience and reduce the critic's emotional impact. Mindfulness practices allow observation of negative thoughts without being controlled by them. Reflection and journaling reveal how criticism affects emotions, choices, and behavior. Social support strengthens perspective, mitigating the influence of internal critical voices. The critic often signals areas needing improvement when interpreted constructively rather than judgmentally. Over time, observing, reframing, and practicing self-compassion transforms the inner critic into a supportive guide. Repeated practice strengthens neural pathways associated with kindness, reducing habitual negative thought patterns. Awareness of exaggeration and distortion preserves realistic self-perception and promotes confidence. Mindful attention to thought patterns fosters conscious choice over automatic self-criticism. Inner critics persist because they are habitual, but evidence-based strategies allow their influence to diminish. Behavioral experiments provide evidence that challenges exaggerated self-judgment, reinforcing adaptive self-talk. Reflection and mindfulness create space to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively to criticism. Gratitude, positive self-talk, and structured reflection balance internal dialogue and reduce negative dominance. Observing self-critical thoughts without attachment decreases their automatic impact on emotions and behavior. Combining cognitive restructuring, mindfulness, and self-compassion empowers individuals to manage criticism effectively. Visualization and supportive inner dialogue foster resilience and confidence in challenging situations. Journaling and reflection track progress, helping transform self-critical patterns into constructive insights. Acceptance of the critic, combined with intentional reframing, encourages growth instead of fear or avoidance. Social support and mentorship provide objective guidance that reduces the critic's influence. Mindful practices strengthen awareness of